Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for watching the Capital Beat podcast live here from 802 Scoop, streaming from 802 Scoop, and recording live from Inside Scoop Studios. And with us, we have Topper McFaun, Mike Tagliavia, and a newbie, Josh Dobrovich. Josh Dobrovich. I'm sorry, Josh Dobrovich from Williamstown.
It's okay,
Welcome.
Sunshine. I let you get away with it today.
I'm. So for folks that don't know, I constantly harass him because of some decisions that he's made on the floor.
That's okay. He can wish all he wants for what he wants, but life is what it is.
We all have good relationships here, so we
Absolutely.
like to harass each other. So how are you guys doing today?
Terrific.
Fantastic.
So we haven't been on air for 2 weeks now.
Right.
I know. What the heck?
It's because I wasn't here.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't here. You bailed out on us on 3 times.
Or more.
Or more.
Or more.
Or more. Or more.
I think it's more. Just want to go on record there.
Just more. It's more? Yeah. Well,
He's been
yeah.
trying since we all got into the house in
Yep.
January. So,
No, I think I've been trying since before that.
yeah, I know I have. I've been trying since
we met.
orientation, yeah.
Yep.
Finally got you here. So, let's talk about what's been happening in the State House. Does that sound like a lot of fun?
A lot
I
of
mean,
fun.
we could,
Well, we can start off by...
What if we say nothing?
I was going to say, we could say nothing and go home and it would be accurate.
Well, the good news, since we haven't done a lot, is we haven't hurt the Vermont taxpayer and the Vermont residents much financially. And we haven't taken a lot of their freedoms because everything has been slow rolled. So there is a silver lining to it. But on the other hand, we haven't fixed the affordability or the safety or the taxation or what else?
I haven't even started to.
Maybe, would you say, Topper, some of the healthcare stuff?
Some stuff, but it's not really costing the state a lot of money, which is good. I mean,
Right.
it's fixing some things that needed to be fixed for a long time.
Okay, well, I mean, there is a silver lining, like I said, but there are some things that came up last year that obviously the voters said, hey, deal with this.
Oh, are you talking about the Clean Heat Standard?
Well,
Are you
there's
talking about
one
the
of those
Clean Heat
things too.
Standard
There's
just
that.
seems to
that's-
die.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And it's not coming off the wall. It's not going to be addressed. And apparently, the bill that's trying to find its way, or actually went back to committee, I think, in the Senate,
it was dropped back on the table.
because it was an awful bill. It didn't really address the clean heat standard. So that's one of those things people, they're anxious about. I know I don't want to see any, whatever you call it, fee, carbon tax.
Increased costs
Increase.
to the constituents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
don't
what happened
think
over
you're
in
going
the
to see
Senate?
that.
Do we know what happened in the Senate?
It was attached to what? S68, but that turned into an awful bill. And I think it found its way back into committee because I guess
I
the
know.
general public found out how awful it was.
And I don't know if that's the case. I just know that it sounded like it was being kind of like soft sold in this other bill, and
Yes.
and then whatever happened there, it had to. I think I could be wrong. That whole bill I thought had to go back to committee to be
So
some part of it hashed out. And this guy's got a computer in front of him.
I
He could
do.
probably tell us
Yes,
a
he
little
does.
more to
I
get
do.
us talking more.
I can say that Act or S68.
Yes.
It is currently still in the Senate. it looks like they did a floor roll call. It was 13 yays and 17
That's what it was.
nays.
Yes.
And it looks like looks like so Beck was a yay. Brandon, that he's a Republican, right?
Yep.
And Brock. So it looks like it went down party lines. Collimore,
Where is it now? Is it-
Douglas.
Back
it's
in the committee?
Senate. It's still in the Senate.
Yeah, but
So-
is it in the
It went
Senate
back
committee?
to committee, right?
Right.
And it looks like its location is Senate Committee on Natural Resources and
Yeah,
Energy.
yeah, that's what I
Okay.
figured.
So I wonder why did they not want to pass that?
I don't remember exactly, but I feel like I read an article in the last 24 to 48 hours that gave a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, there was. There was something where it actually gives more incentives to the part of S68 that doesn't have anything to do with the clean heat standard.
That
It
has
gives
to be-
more money to Efficiency Vermont, which was unpopular with some. And I think,
right.
what was it? I can't remember. I
Yeah,
read
a
an
lot of-
article a couple weeks ago about what it did with the clean heat standard part, which was unpopular also. It didn't make it so that it can completely go away.
I do feel like there was a portion of it that was causing concerns with the utility companies, and
Okay.
how the money was, how some of it was being either portioned out or something like that. Like, it did not necessarily that it was doing anything to the utilities, but like some of the funds, and like they were just upset that this was benefiting certain groups and not others who could actually use it for more public good.
Yeah, and
Okay.
bottom line is, though, it's not a popular subject right now.
Right.
So it's going to stay where it is for a while.
Right. Well, and that's like a lot of bills, right? Like, there are bills that people want, but it's not. There's enough, as I would call it, third rail electricity in it to make people, to make legislators who don't want to get into that conversation afraid to actually touch those third
Yeah.
rails.
Well, if you want to, how about something that I don't think I'm not, Mike, I know you probably didn't announce it on the live stream, but what is it, H-43, the exemption for military retirees, 20
Oh my
years or
God,
more?
right?
That's got 77 sponsors.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer, and it can't get anywhere.
And no one wants to touch
It
it.
can't get traction.
And again, right, like, that's
would
one
pass.
that, wouldn't you think that you'd take one that would make 90% of the population happy? I don't know why it wouldn't make 100%, but let's say 90.
Yeah.
Part of the population actually happy and be like, oh my God, this is an amazing thing.
It is.
But instead, we're going to leave it on the wall and we're going to try and
Hooking onto something else.
hooking on something else, or we're going to try and rejigger this over here and that over here. We're going to create, we're going to look at bad tax policy. We're going to look at
Yeah.
bad education policy. We're going to do all these things, but we're not going to, and at least let's do some things that are going to make our constituents feel good about their government, right?
well,
Yes,
yeah.
these things are hard, but here's something that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, that particular bill is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. Number one, it's an economic development tool, because if you do that, and what will happen is veterans, well, not even, I mean, just people that do 20 years in the service
So, yeah,
will come to Vermont to live.
right.
Right.
Because they get the tax break, they have a whole career in front
Am I
of them.
correct that it's like we're one of three?
Only 3 or 4 states
Right, like,
left.
why would you put up a barrier? We're hemorrhaging people young. We're hemorrhaging our younger population.
Yes.
Why would you leave just yet another barrier up to do it? Why not have something that's attractive?
Yeah.
That's a
Right?
question
Like,
we can't get answered.
I know.
Well,
And
it's a good bill. It's a good bill,
Yeah.
and it's been around for a while. It has a lot of support in the legislature, outside the legislature. It's something that you can do that's very positive, and it will help it'll help our workforce build again,
And that's
rebuild.
the other part. This has been introduced multiple sessions.
I think, yeah,
And
this is,
the
I think,
second
at
or
least the
third?
third session.
And nobody
It doesn't make
I
sense.
introduced it twice.
right, okay, right, and I think Hangover we introduced it twice. So I mean, there's 4 times.
Yeah.
So, some people say, oh, because it's the tax money, there are people in the legislature who don't want to see that tax money, that tax revenue coming in go away. But the
Well, hey,
veterans who retire are going to stay here. They got to work on their house. They have to have work done. They have to buy cars, buy a new lawnmower occasionally, do all kinds of other things. They're going to buy groceries and everything else. So that money is going to be spent in the economy, into the economy.
And how about we stop adding bills that create more cost that don't provide any real benefit, and how about we go back and go through a lot of what we've put out there in the last decade and start clawing back some of the bills that are costing money,
Right.
and then there you go, you clean up a little bit, but
Right.
and not saying that everything's like that, but all I hear when I got into the house is how the people have spoken, and we need to start passing bills that don't bring extra costs, and we need to do things now. Now, mind you, we haven't passed a ton that add extra costs, but if you look at the bills that have been
wait a minute,
introduced,
wait a minute.
okay, sorry, I
I
got
mean, hold the phone.
But
Before I have to push back on you on
Okay, well,
that
can
just a little bit.
But before you do, what I mean by that is we've passed things that have cost money, but and actually more money than we need to be spending, and we're going to get to that, I'm sure. But what amazes me is if you look at what bills were of the 500 bills that were presented to the House, right, and gone to all of their respective committees, and you look at how many of them are like unnecessary, the constituents around the state are not at large asking for these things, and they bring a significant cost. Why would we be introducing any of these bills to committees when we're like, stop spending money?
Because
right?
the message was not received. That's why.
I know.
The message from
And
November
then,
was not received.
right? So then they try and into these other bills to try and that's politics in general, I guess.
But that's
right.
the thing.
Mike's
If
itching.
that happens, and it is going to throw the budgetary process so far out of whack, the governor's going to veto that.
Right?
And for the first time in a long time,
Was
there's enough
2018?
votes.
2018 was the last time, maybe, or was it 16?
I don't even
Well,
know.
he did. I think he overturned one veto last year.
Well, I mean, before, right? But what I think you're saying is that there's
There's
the
enough votes to
conservative
uphold the
majority
veto.
is able to override a veto. He would have it would be a cross-party line.
Sustain a
previous-
veto.
Sustain a veto. I mean,
Sustain a veto.
whereas
Yeah.
before, like it would be harder to cross that party line to do so, and it's been. I don't know if it was 16 or 18 was the last I heard, but I mean, we're talking almost 10 years before.
I don't even think it was then, because
No, I could be
when
wrong.
I first came in, and that was 2004, I think it was, 3 or 4, we had 51, I think. And I don't think we've had it since then.
I mean, like I said, I
It's
could
gone
be wrong.
higher and higher and higher the other way, so that it became a supermajority.
So as
You wanna
I
drive
said,
the
I
truck
was
over me? Go
gonna.
ahead.
I do want to state that I went online, checked out the vote roll call. Nobody made a statement as to why they voted. At least I can't see it. It's very frustrating. I'm very
which
What's that?
disappointed.
What are we talking about?
For the clean heat standard, I'm not finding any.
It was a roll call. No one gave a reason.
No one gave a
That's
reason.
interesting.
Yes.
And how did it roll? Like who? Party
For-
line?
Oh, it was pretty.
Was
much
a hard party
line.
line?
Yeah, because
Which one are you talking about?
The
original
Affordable
clean.
Heat Act.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty much party line.
Amazing piece of legislation.
Yeah. So, but as for the whole, raising the cost, I'll just say raising the $25 million base, right? Wasn't it $25 million in base funding for the budget?
I was thinking more like individual bill, not the budget or not a big money bill like that, but just
Maybe
like
$10 million for
yeah,
the
that was a whole nother.
for the,
Oh,
the
that was with regard to H91 you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And that, 2 of the 3 parts of that bill are good.
Right.
Yeah.
The one, the unsafe injection sites, which
Well,
we
that
know-
wasn't even
91.
part of that.
That was
that passed, but that
But
did
that was
pa-
the other one.
No,
the
that was
H91 was the housing bill.
Oh, the
yeah.
housing-
H91
bill.
was the
Which
housing.
was the
So
one that I'm talking about?
You're talking
You're-
the opioid bill.
the opioid bill is the one that had the funding for the
The 1.1
injection,
million for the injection
safe
site.
injection sites,
Okay.
which I voted no.
All right, yeah, no, and look,
It was on my campaign material. I voted no on it.
Okay.
You bet your booty.
okay, so
Not saying that-
I got them confused. There's so many.
think
of
we
them,
all-
so
I
many
don't know
bills. Yeah, but getting back to the number of bills, we've got 500. We broke the 500 mark that were introduced on the House floor.
Yep.
We've broken 100 on the Senate floor, which means we are on par at the end of this biennium to be exactly where we were last biennium. So obviously, there are a lot of people who haven't gotten the message that the way things were going is not the way the voters want them to go, but still in this session, because I'll leave it for our
now
Is that in
people
defense?
watching.
I was just saying, in their defense, right? Like,
Well, I mean, I've submitted like 10 bills.
yeah, well, we know how you are.
Yeah, but Mike, to your
You mean
to your
advocating
point,
for my constituents?
But no, so this is where I'm gonna.
But to your point, did your bills were they regarding something that were going to make things more affordable? Were they going to make one of the bills I know would have were about public safety? What was the one? What bill number was it with regard to people in the hotel, motel, or rental units where
Oh,
if they
yeah.
were caught
If you,
dealing drugs or something, there was a
Yeah, that
Those
was
were off
that
limits.
died on the
that's,
Okay,
wall.
but
that
the
is
only
going to
one
hang on the wall
introduced-
for the next
Yeah.
year and a half.
Okay, so it was introduced, but it didn't come off the wall.
True.
It would have made public safety. It would
So-
have affected it.
Right. So but like I agree with Mike though that as he said, in his defense, like 10 bills for their area. As much as I like to say, the body politic didn't ask for it. I mean, their bills based on the people who put them in. I'm pretty sure their constituents are all over it and all happy about it. It doesn't mean the rest of the state likes it, which is why they're hanging on the wall still too, right? So they may be. I'm just trying to say there's a juxtaposition. Whether we agree with the whole state liking it or not, that's a different story. Their constituents in their district may love.
So I know that
Okay.
we're going through in our committee reviewing all the bills. And I think, is that what you guys are also doing?
We're all done with that.
You're already done with that?
Yeah.
No. You've done an introduction of every bill in your committee?
Yeah, pretty much, except the ones that have come over from the Senate.
Not even close in my committee, not even close.
No, we
If the
went
chair
through.
has no interest in it, it's not going anywhere. We had 4 that were introduced by 4 of the 6 that we asked the chair to have introduced got introduced, and that was it. They're probably not going to get talked about, or there won't be any witnesses asked to come forward, and the chair actually wasn't even present for those introductions for that morning, which
So
kind of was.
I
It
can-
wasn't kind of. It was very disappointing to see that.
I think in my committee, the way that our chair's taking it is that he is allowing people to come, present, and then we as a committee are going to make a decision on what we start pulling off from the wall from there.
God, you're going to talk together and decide together?
Well, that's
Our committee
I
kicks
wish
ass,
it was
I'm
like
not
that
gonna
in my
lie.
committee.
You a little
So,
jealous?
yeah, no.
We did ours early.
Yeah, so we
And there's bills that have come in after that, plus the Senate bills. And unless those ones that have come in after that, never, what we tried to do is get all the bills reviewed way before crossover, so we could figure out which bills we were gonna deal with.
And my committee is probably a mixed bag of the 3, right? So early on, we've heard some testimony before crossover of introductions, right? We've had a few introductions. There are definitely some bills that were not and will likely not be introduced because they don't want. There was one bill. So on Tuesday, I'd read. They had asked like, oh, what would we like to talk about? This week and moving forward, and I brought up cell phone free schools
That would be a great
and
one
that
to take
and
up.
that one we actually had we had heard an introduction on that. I'm not sure that that's a yes or a no. I don't know at the moment. There's a bill on there about schools not being able to force kids to wear masks.
Right.
I asked to have that one just taken up in conversation, and there was conversation about does it belong with us or does it belong in healthcare?
Yeah.
And then there was the comment made of, well, if it's going to die on their wall, why? And it's going to die on our wall, why bother even sending it over?
Right.
So, for me, I had a discussion about it because I had a committee mate who doesn't like that bill, and there are those that do like it. And so we were in a discussion back and forth, and I said, this is exactly why. Like, you're a no, I'm talking from a yes, right? That bill is good, and you're from a bill that bill is no good. Like, this is the discussion we have to have. If it sits on the wall, we don't have the discussion, and we can't find a way through. And that's what I'm finding happens a lot, right? There's the theater of let's have a discussion, but there's really no discussion to be had.
Yeah, there's plenty of theater.
And that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's politics in general. But that was the two that I brought forth. One is going to go nowhere. I'm not so sure about the cell phone one. There were 49 people who signed on to it. There are a lot of people who are for it. There's been a lot of people trying to come in and talk about it. It's now a nationwide conversation, I think, in the federal government. So I think it's
Well, we have schools in Vermont that have used it.
great.
And-
Like Harwood's
and
doing a
it's
fantastic
showing
job with it.
Yeah. So
Really,
I think
great
I just
promise.
segued Mike from.
you did.
I
So we
like
will
that.
definitely talk about the no cell phones in school kind of issue.
Sorry
One way
about
or
that.
another, that bill, it coming on the floor.
Well, and so the exact same.
You think it's going to make
so
it to the
here's-
floor?
It will absolutely hit the floor. Either it's going to hit the floor in the Senate,
Yep.
or it's going to hit the floor here in the House. One way or another, that bill is moving forward
here's the-
somewhere.
and here's the
and it
interesting-
might even be an amendment.
And here's the interesting piece: the bill in the Senate and the bill in the House are identical.
Yeah.
And the bill in the Senate was introduced by a Republican, and the bill in the House was introduced by a Democrat. If you look at the signatures on it, it is a bipartisan bill. There is tons of data. There are there's Jonathan Haidt wrote a good book about it, and his organization puts a ton of information out there. I mean, whatever your stance is on it, I repeat, to not have an honest conversation and dialogue and testimony is a disservice to something that could prove so helpful for our kids. When we talk about all of this mental health crisis, it's a low-hanging fruit that no one wants to pick.
Well,
Where I
it's-
say this,
It's
that-
really sad because, to your point about, the mental health issues, there are two, I watched the video. There was a presentation in, what was it, room 11, about the cell phone-free schools.
Yep.
And in both cases, they noticed that the kids were talking amongst themselves and not using their phone. They weren't distracted. They were getting better grades. And there were so many pluses, and they were very inexpensive policies to introduce.
have to raise my hand.
Really, really inexpensive. When we talk about the price of education, these are like a drop in the bucket.
Well, I mean, so, what I keep hearing is there are schools that have policy, and when the policies are enacted to not allow teachers not allow phones in classrooms, it does well, and it keeps down distractions. So two parts to that, right? The teacher is going to tell the student to not have a phone. Now you're creating a power struggle between a teacher and a student that will continue on through the whole class and potentially for a longer period of time. So the teacher's got to do this. Then you have a student who's like, no, I'm not gonna. Yes, you are. And then you get in this thing where now you're calling somebody from the office to deal with it. And now you're 20 minutes into a 45-minute class.
They didn't have that much
no.
pushback, though.
But no, that's because we don't have, the school doesn't have a cell phone ban bill. It's just don't use your phone in class is the conversation, right? If they actually did the thing, it would actually help. But what I'm saying is so that's one aspect. So you get the, oh, well, in our school it works well. We don't have distractions in class. Great. But what about recess? What about in the hall? What about waiting to see what was on whatever social media or group text, right?
Well, I can answer that,
No,
too,
but
if
so
you
this
want.
guy Jonathan Haidt does, right, when he wrote this book, he talks about how in all these schools that have actually done it worldwide in our country, within a week, kids who were staring at their phone while they're walking through the hall are now having conversations, sitting together at lunch, enjoying life. Yeah, you're going to have the unpleasant conversations, but they're going to be in person and live, not through a device. Like, there's so much data that shows how this has been positive, and yet there's so much pushback. And I'm like, we're all addicted to the phone, and those who aren't, God bless you, because somehow you didn't do it. But we all scroll, we all do the things, and I know as an adult how hard it is for me, let alone a developing, emerging brain that is trying to do all these things. Like, how? And then how do you? I don't know.
Well,
It is really a good question. How is this bill not moving forward when you look at the co-sponsors on there?
Oh my God!
I mean, the co-sponsors alone in the House, why it's not moving forward is beyond my comprehension. Michael, go for it.
in the two examples I saw in that one presentation, they had two different ways that they were dealing with the phones. And it was in the morning, the phones would go in, and they were going into like the bubble wrap lined
Yeah, the
envelopes.
RAF bags. Yep.
And I don't even think they were
were
RF
just
bags.
an
They were
envelope.
just in an envelope so that they weren't banging together, and they had a name on them, and everybody's phone went in, and they dropped them in the morning, and then certain time at the end of the day, they picked them up. The other school had them, they took an old, and it was a smaller school, this one was in Vermont, like we have in the legislative lounge, they have the mail slots. Each student had their slot that they would put the phone in. And one of the things, like you said, how do you enforce this? They had one student who resisted. I can't remember which school this was in. But the student was going in and putting their phone, what they thought was their phone, in the slot. But it was a decoy. And they realized it, and then they found it. Well, okay, there's the system, okay, the first time or the second time. It was basically like this 3-strike rule.
Right.
And they weren't trying to be really punitive, but it was just to get compliance. And they found that compliance was not a big problem. So because I was against it at first, but after I saw, and talked to a few people and watched that video, I think, like you said, it's got so much sponsorship.
it
It should
does.
be.
And then
it
there's-
should be debated.
And I'm going to read off the sponsors, and we
Hold on,
can.
before we do, because I want to piggyback
Sure.
on something he said. So, with what you were saying about the ease of doing it, right? Like, there's a so one of the news coverage I had read. I'm going to say it's Wisconsin or it's somewhere out there. And this city school, large population, they implemented it. They did it in 1 year. What they do is you walk in. They have each person has a box, served an alphabetical name. They have manila folders. Give them the phone, put it in, right? They like very large school, like 95 or more like success rate of kids doing it. The kids who don't do it, like they have to like pay attention, right? So they're kids who will bring in a breakfast and they stuff it under their food, right? They talked about how this is, but then they interviewed kids, and that was the amazing point about all the kids who were like, yeah, I wouldn't have done this, and I didn't like it, but I do like it now, and it's totally better, and like and it was a group of a very diverse group of children sitting there having this conversation. It was pretty cool to hear that. So then when you think about it, right? In our schools, we look at what's our biggest population school in the state right now.
I don't even know.
Is it
Got to be in Burlington.
probably like
South
500-600 kids, right? Burlington area.
I think Berry City has
South
like
Burlington
500,
is-
Okay, so use
600.
Berry City. Let's say Berry City at 500, right? What's a box of what's 500 manila envelopes cost in a few?
What do they do with these phones when they put them in?
Just turn them
Who
off.
makes sure that they're
and then
turned
the phone
off?
goes
Turn
into
them off
the-
or put it in airplane mode.
Yeah,
They
and-
just tell them.
and you
beside
put it
the
in the
fact-
principal's office.
Right. It's not
Or a
like
locked
they're
closet.
accessible.
Yeah.
If the teacher turns around, they
So
can grab them.
my thought is, right, so here's the other thought, right? So now what you do, and this is how I would do it, if I would, in my school district, if I had the choice and I was going to do it, I'd do something like manila envelopes and boxes, right, locked in the closet, but only administrators would take the phones. So whether it's a principal or a janitor, or no teachers touch the phones. It's only right. So now you take away the power struggle between the child and the teacher right at the door, and then the teachers stand outside the door as the kids are coming in, high five, knuckle in, how you doing today? And all schools say that that's part of the way it's supposed to be done, but we know all schools don't do that. But then you have a teacher, like if a kid's frustrated coming off the line from giving up their phone, they now have a friendly voice who's like, how you doing today? What's new, right? And you're diffusing anything coming out of the gate, right? You have empathy at the door. To me, and then it breeds more of a connection with the teacher as the enforcer, right?
Yeah.
So that does, it's inexpensive. There's other ways, schools that are doing it free. There's no cost. Right? There's so many ways to do this, and then, or you can spend thousands of dollars and buy RIF packs. But you spend $5,000 on RIF envelopes that block signals to the phones. I mean, for the cost one time, for the benefits and the cost savings you're going to have down the road.
I don't even think they did the RF things.
Lamoille, they just instituted it,
Yep.
and they just did it, and
Yep,
there's
that's what
been
Harvard
no
did.
problems whatsoever. They may have had like one or two problems, but the kids don't fight it. I mean, it's a very strict policy. First time you get told to put it away. Second time it goes to the office. Third time the phone has to be picked up by a parent, and I think that's what it is. And
I think that's the way a lot of them do it.
yeah, and regarding, you mentioned Hardwood, we actually had a page from Hardwood. Hardwood, sorry.
No D.
And we were talking, Angela and I, who is the actual sponsor of the bill, Angela
Arsenault.
who's a Democrat.
Yep.
And I was just looking at the list, and it's all Republican, Democrat. It's down
You're going to
the
read
line.
it in a minute, but
No, I'm not going to, because it's like way too long.
it's only
But
49.
it's a lot of people. It's more people that supported that than voted for my bill.
At 38.
Love you, Michael.
Anyway, that being said, and one of the girl was in there while we were talking about it, and Angela said, "Hey, you go there. What is your thoughts?" And she was like, "I love it." And the problem with this bill is that first step. It's not once you take the step.
Ripping the Band-Aid.
It's ripping the Band-Aid off. Exactly.
People
It's
don't
the
like
first
change.
step.
Well, and
I would love to know what people think online. A couple people are watching. What is your thoughts about a cell phone ban?
it's
in the
interesting
school system?
because there are, I've sat with people on my committee who are, so against it.
Oh, well, one of them wrote an op-ed because McCann is in your committee,
that's
correct?
Right. And what's funny is that, so at the school she teaches at, there are other people who have been like, we need it. Our policy isn't working. They're saying that it works great. So it's like, there's this,
So what's their argument for against?
I haven't read the op-ed.
You'd have
but-
to read the.
Yeah, I didn't-
I didn't read it either.
and but again, it's like my problem is where's the miss, right? And I think it needs to be debated. It needs to be talked about. We need to have good testimony from different sources, because I'm not a therapist in the field who can say I know this is how it works. But I've read a lot of information in studies and from therapists, from people, from teachers, educators, principals. It makes all the sense in the world to me. Now, what I'm going to say is I'm going to try and be the devil's advocate on a couple points. So I'll play that side of the card.
That's okay. I'll make sure to bring out the holy water and splash you with it.
So what about, okay, in today's day and age, bosses use technology all day long to get a hold of their employees, right? So you might work in retail and you might not have a schedule till that day, depending on where you're working. So maybe your boss sends you your schedule for the day while you're in school, right? So that's how you get it. You can see it and know, oh, okay, right after school I have to go to work as opposed to go home, right? So one thing might be now I can't communicate with my boss. What if my job is at jeopardy? Hold on. So another one. What if my what if my parent needs to get a hold of me, right? What if they need to get a hold of me or I need to get a hold of them? How do I do this? If there's an emergency, they have to come get me. What if I have a medical problem and I need to get, we need to get a hold of my parents because I have a recurring medical problem that is a thing, and I'm past the point of being able to manage it here, so now I have to get to the hospital or something like that. Listen, I'm just being the devil's advocate. I'm trying to throw it to you guys for the reasons, because I already know.
It's not as if they can't call whatever the main office or whatever the school so that they can, relay messages. And the same with the school. If there's a medical issue, when you and I were in school, we didn't have these, and there was still, if there was a medical issue.
What if your parent doesn't answer the phone when the school calls?
How do we know that if the child has the phone that the parent's not going to be able to answer the phone?
I'm just going to point out that I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I survived without cell phone usage at high school.
No,
and John Anderson points out here, he made a comment about making it so that the kids should be focusing on not on beast videos, but like mathematical problems solving through the phones. And I'll just say the age-appropriate code that came over from the Senate is probably going to address something about that, because, that's a whole different kit and caboodle, John. We'll have to have that conversation later on.
So
Age-appropriate.
So with all of these, right? There's the answers. Or we've grown, our kids, our young kids, and most of the parents of these kids have grown up in the technology age. So we are so that is the concern. I think it is right. There's a good large subset of people who've grown up in the technology age or have been young adults coming up in the technology age, and they've only been used to using technology to communicate, a cell phone, right? Even if you've only been doing it for a couple of years, right? If you handed someone an adult who's never had a cell phone today, and in 4 years, they would likely be texting everything, communicating that way, email, all that. Look at this guy right here.
Well, I'm trying to find a meme.
And then So what I'm
to make his point.
But what I'm saying is,
I've
right?
seen
So
it all
once
over,
that
but
happens,
I
right,
can't
it's
find
so ingrained in you. So you now have to relearn, which doesn't take very long. As an adult, though, it's hard to sit there and say, okay, I have to cut this cord and do this thing differently. It's a hard thing to do. And these things are so addictive. I mean,
that's
so that's the pushback, is not even just for the kids, but like the parental control. And then you throw in any scary situation here, and it feels even scarier. Although law enforcement says that it's actually it's safer for them not to have it, because if there is an instance where the law enforcement needs to be involved, anybody having the cell phones within the school actually creates more of a problem for them.
Yep, and Angela brought that up to me. Mm-hmm. She said that the SROs did a letter saying that cell phones were they would recommend getting rid of the cell phones.
But Mike, like you said, you and I, and probably even this guy, although he's younger, I know you.
Younger.
You grew up drinking from a garden hose, riding in the back of pickup trucks, all that stuff, riding your bike, not going home.
I'm curious how old he thinks I am.
Just before dinner time, it was like no matter where you were, make sure you're not late for dinner, right? So this idea that we have to have our electronic leash with us all the time is, you brought it up. If you're addicted to it, and that's one of the things that there are people, psychiatrists and psychologists say, for the kids, it is. And they're so used to it.
The data shows that,
Yes.
What is it? You should, no Facebook or social media until you're 16 is the earliest your brain can handle somewhat, the amount of information that you get.
Right.
And no smartphone before before 9th grade, I think is what's emerging as far as the best practice, and then prior to that, a flip phone if necessary.
Yeah.
That's the best practices for it all that's coming out, and
So let's shift gears just a little bit, because we all agree that we're going to vote for that bill and just make it happen, correct?
if it comes out.
If it comes out.
I mean,
I want to say, I can't look,
I mean, it's on the wall of my committee, so I hope it comes up.
I hope it does too. Don't worry.
You're going to vote
Believe
for
me,
it.
One way that bill is going to make it out there. I thought about putting it into the kids' code.
I'll give you a yes with one condition, as long as it's not Christmas tree.
Well,
Hang all kinds of stupid stuff on it and try to get it out.
that does.
If it's a
irritate
single
And-
subject
and-
like it
and-
is now,
me.
great.
Should probably explain what the Christmas tree thing is. That's
Yeah.
where at the end of the year they start hanging everything on. a
Or at the end of the
bill.
session, yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
or end of the session to get it passed.
And also too,
But you gotta put it on a bill that's either a must-pass bill
right.
Which is
or a bill that
exactly
you know it's gonna pass.
Which is what I was talking about with kids' code, which
Right.
would be adding it to that.
Would be Christmas treeing it. But again, too, also the problems are, right? Like we're talking about this bill as it's written. I think it's a fantastic bill. Could you make some tweaks here and there? Absolutely. Many, probably not. But my fear is that it gets off the wall and gets hijacked, right? And it gets strike all, which means they take out
Yeah.
all the original text and then they turn it into something that is not even what it was meant to be. Or it gets picked apart and as it is and gets turned into a watered down version of it to kick the can down the road, which seems to be what this year has been about so far. And or it gets passed as it is and it goes across the way to the Senate and the same thing happens over there or not. Like, I don't know, my fear is that it'll come off the wall and it'll be a shell of its former self, and then that's
Yeah, but
unfortunate.
even if that happens though,
I don't think
you
that's-
still have a process where you can bring that bill, you can bring those pieces that got taken
Is that
out.
the committee of
You can take them
conference,
back,
or-
put them back in.
And I think there's some really strong hard hitters on that bill that are
Yeah.
really interested in it. Angela Arsenal does not seem like a person that's going to allow that to happen. I might be wrong. but-
Well, and I know, so I brought this to the attention of my own school board quite a bit of time ago, and I had the same issues there that I have here. There was a lot more support. There was a lot of support, but it didn't really move very well. And I was excited to hear about this bill from Angela, which is one of the reasons why I co-sponsored it. But I know some of the people who have been working on the behind the scenes, like the constituent side of it, bringing this information in, and they come from everywhere, all walks of life, all sides of the political spectrum. Like it's just blows my mind.
All right.
Where are we going, Mike?
Let's transfer over to buying down medical bills. We'll let Topper have a go at that. For buying down the medical bills.
Yep. I can't remember, I think it's S18, but I'm not sure. It's Senate, no, it went in the House first. This is a bill where the state treasurer was allocated $1 million, and the $1 million is going to be used to eliminate medical bills that have been on the books for a long time, and they're in the bad debt stage. That when those bills get to that point. So what happens is this: I all of a sudden had a major medical problem, and cost me thousands and thousands, and maybe even hundreds and thousands of dollars. No way I can pay it. It's gone to the collection agencies. My creditors got screwed up about it. And so what happens here is there's a business, and I think it's called medical something, medical, I can't remember the name of the business. But they make a deal with the state of Vermont, and the treasurer has this $1 million, and if a hospital can't collect the money, and an individual is within 400% of the poverty level. The bill's been on the books for a long while. It's more than 5% of my wage. Then what happens is this company that we've contracted with goes to the hospital. Well, I'm using the hospital, but it can be used by others too. And they buy that debt. So the hospital may get $100 on every $10,000 of what you owe them. They don't get it all. It's removed from the hospital. Now the debt is owned by that company that we made the contract with. The hospital writes it off. A hospital could, if they wanted to, say, I'm going to donate it. So they put it in their bad debt package, and the person doesn't owe the money anymore. The hospital's not hounding them for it. It's gone away. The hospital might or might not get a certain amount of money on every, if it's $100,000, they may get $10,000 of that out of that $1 million. So that's how they're buying down. That's how the debt will be bought down.
So I have some questions.
Sure.
So that the company that's buying it.
Yeah.
So if they're buying the debt, what are they doing with it?
Nothing. Nothing.
They're buying. So are they a nonprofit that's buying
Yep.
it, or they're
Yep.
buying it with some kind of funds from somewhere, and they're just
It's $1
going
million.
But
$1
They
million
negotiated
doesn't
with-
go very far in healthcare these days.
It doesn't, but they're not paying the full price of that debt.
Right,
I'm
like
saying
they're
that they may
buying
get
it-
$1 on every
I
$10,000.
mean, so to me, right? So having worked in lending, I mean, and I know it's not a collection agency, so I want to be clear.
No.
But a collection agency buys the debt from the original creditor for a discounted rate so that the creditor can take it off their books, but then
Right.
the collection agency goes after it. In this case, it's a similar process, but they're not going after it.
No.
They're using money from somewhere. Where's that money coming from?
The money is coming from the state treasurer, the $1 million.
Okay, so as a state, we're funding the money to go to this company. This company
right.
is going to buy the debt from the hospitals
Yep.
and doctors,
And that's the end of it.
and that's the end of it. And is
And
this
the
a
credit
one-time
card is
program, or
clean,
is this
too.
an annual program? Is this a
what?
one-time? Is this a
Well, right now, it's a one-time thing.
okay? So now, going to continue on down this road. Sorry, Mike. So they do this, right? And my understanding, and forgive me if I missed a point because I was trying to research something really quick, is that it's to help people who, it's to help get it pulled from their credit so that they don't have issues. So it doesn't hurt their credit for getting loans, for getting other things.
They can't buy a car or anything.
And the hospital, though, gets it off their books, which I'm not as concerned with because lending institutions have charged off debt all the time and it just sits there forever. And if the hospital's not going after it anymore, the hospital will stop going after it at some point because it makes no sense to spend the money.
They're not going to get it anyway.
So, with that
And who
said,
does it help?
So now here's the thing. This is where I'm going to push back on it because I do think it's a great plan. However, prior to what I'm about to read, most of the credit bureaus stopped using medical debt, negative medical debt collection on credit reports as a means of scoring somebody. In 2025, the United States no longer allows medical debt, including credit reports, for lending decisions. So they don't even look at medical debt anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that if you like, it can still show up for some things, like if an insurance company does their insurance pool and it shows that you can't pay all these debts and medical's on there, maybe it hurts you with them giving you insurance. But as far as for lending, like where I was, most the three big bureaus stopped using it before, because I left there before this law came about, and they wouldn't even call it into question that people would have great scores with medical debt because they no longer used it as a credit decision. And now since 2025, my question is how with this bill or with this happening to help people who can't pay for large medical bills, but in general their credit's fine because they do everything well. They just can't pay 50 grand for the heart surgery they had or 100 grand or whatever it is. Since that's not going to hit their credit anyways, and this is under that.
The credit was the only one thing that it.
Okay, so that's why I said maybe I
So,
missed something
yeah.
else.
Is this S27, which is an act relating to medical debt relief and
Yeah,
excluding
yeah.
And
medical
so I'm not
debt
going
from
after.
credit
that's
I'm
cards?
just trying to just
credit reports?
understand all of the
Yeah,
pieces of it.
well, the other piece is medical debt is the biggest reason why people go bankrupt in the United States and Vermont.
Well, I got questions too.
True.
Okay. First of all, $1 million. $1 million. How many people testified to how much debt they had when they talked about this?
I think
'Cause
there's
you could-
60, I think there's 60, either 62 or 66,000 people in
Just in the
Vermont
state
that
of
have
Vermont?
medical debt.
62 or 66,000.
That they can't pay.
$1 million isn't going to go very far.
Well, we're not going to do it all in 1 year. I mean, this is a test to see if it'll work. Let me see, I gotta,
I mean, you get a cancer survivor who's been fighting cancer for 3 years.
62,000 Vermonters.
Okay, 62,000. So you got somebody who's a cancer survivor. Dude, hell, there are some cancer treatments that one dose is $15,000.
That's right.
So $1 million could be accrued by I
One
wanna say
person.
2 people, one
Yep,
person.
yep.
So
But just remember, this is limited to people 400% of the poverty level. That's for a family, probably $62,000 a year or something like that.
So, sure.
Or if it's
That-
5%
that
of your
encompasses
income.
a lot of people.
Well, it
a
will.
lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'm looking here at some of the material that was presented to you guys, specifically from Mike Pichek. And one of it looks like medical debt is pretty high in the state of Vermont
Yes, it is.
compared to some other states. I mean, we're not the worst.
So,
You know, there's like 3 other states ahead of us.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
but we're
not
almost at the
all the
top.
way at the bottom.
We're not
We're
all the way
we're
at the
almost
bottom.
at the top of states that have high medical debt that
So-
that mentally is affecting people's health. They come out of the hospital, they're thinking of this, they can't pay it. The hospital, some of the hospitals have ways that they're trying to collect it. You know, they try to go in and take your house or put a lien on your house. I mean, this mentally, how are you going to? It's going to be much easier for you to recover from that, whatever happened to you, if you don't have to worry about this. And if you qualify for this, we'll do as many as we can in the year and see how it works. Where it's in, I forget how many states now, about 11 states, and in every one of those states, it's really worked well so far. It's brand new.
Okay. Be interesting to
and-
see how it does
and
work.
and like I said, I might have missed some of it because I was looking at some things about it. But your comment even about, bankruptcy and stuff like that, because even though so to me, like, the credit aspect is a weak argument for it.
That's only one.
Right, but that's what a lot of people will attach to because that's what most people see it as, right? It hits their credit report.
Because they can't buy a car, they can't.
Right, but
They
where-
can't even rent a
where
apartment.
But where your part comes in, right? Like, so, and societally, for some people, that's the worst it would do because they're just not going to pay it anyways. And if it doesn't hit their credit anymore, it's not a big deal. But then you have people who have, who may have a house or may have businesses or may just, have a lot of obligations, and the creditors are still going to come for them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just because it's not on your credit reporting history anymore, creditors, if you owe $100,000 and the hospital is using a pretty aggressive collection agency, I mean, they're going to come for you. You might have a lien on your house now. You might have all these things. So I can see where, in those particular instances, like that, where it is beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think I wonder if there's going to be, like, because 66,000 people, right? You're saying 62,000 people, right? And we know this is a one-time pilot.
Yeah.
But if I do what I call Josh math, $1 million divided by 62,000 people is $16.
How many?
$16.
Yeah.
Right. So how many years does it take to take care of those 62 million people or 62,000 people? Now, do you have to start and I know you're saying there's a certain economic
Income level.
that you have to meet, but then within that income level, you now have to start choosing who, right?
So-
and is there a
Well, there's some guardrails. There's the monetary guardrail.
right?
Then there's the how long has it been on the books guardrail.
Okay.
So you are by the eligibility rules, you're choosing people.
Right, but
And it's mostly people, it'll mostly be people that are in that middle class that have been working.
so what I'm saying is, right. So then so now who has more of a need for it then, right? Does the person who owns the house have more of a need than a person who rents an apartment? Right, because now you're talking about
who's
something
making
that a
these
lien can be
decisions?
put on versus
Well,
something like
it's going to be capstones. Is it
Pardon
going to
me?
be the cap agencies that are going to
Well,
be doing this?
The money,
Will be directed to the
But
capstone.
are
no,
they
that's the
getting-
housing money.
Oh, well, no, I'm seeing testimony on this, and I saw capstone, so I was wondering if they were also going to do. Are they going to take up, like the contract?
Well, they'll be part of the selection process because they'll probably be referring a lot of people to it.
Right, because it's supposed to be $1 million going to an entity, right?
Right.
To
And the name of it, I wish I could remember, maybe the name of it is in the stuff here.
now, or is the legislature
Undue medical debt, no,
is the legislature setting?
that's it, undue medical debt. That's the name of the company. And the state will be in partnership with them, and yet they are a nonprofit.
So but are they the ones setting the rules for who gets it and who doesn't outside of the two that you just mentioned? Or is the legislature dictating the rules and they'll be more robust than that? Or are they going to be just those two particular
The
tracks?
rules are already in.
Right, and
the
there's
rules
those
are
two
already-
tracks.
It's set by the legislature then.
Yeah.
What
But it's only those
interesting.
two tracks, right? The income and then how long it's been on the books
And there's a certain percentage of your income.
and a percentage of your income. But like it doesn't take into account actual, like there's not, like I would think that you would have it where if a family applies or a person applies, right, they're going to fill out a form that says all of these things that they have to show. But like one family may have, like it may impact one person more than another, right? So now you're, I don't know, like
Yeah,
Hey,
I
you
think
know what,
I know
Josh?
what you're saying.
Sometimes we at legislature have to pick winners and losers.
Oh,
yeah,
there you
good.
go.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Oh,
buddy.
you better watch out with that one.
I'm only picking.
Anyhow,
But
we're
on
gonna
a
stay out of
serious
that.
note,
So I'm not trying
how
to fight.
about
I'm doing the
why
devil's
don't we-
advocate.
Here's the
like,
thing, here's the thing. The bill's out of the committee. It's
in
over it's gone over
appropriations.
to the Senate now.
Right.
Some of the questions that you have,
I think it's in appropriations there.
well, wait a minute, that's right, I just remembered it. It gets sent to
Appropriations in the House
appropriations.
or
Yeah,
Senate?
'cause I'm
It's
like,
in the
it hasn't-
appropriations.
we
it's
haven't
in the
seen
House
it.
right now.
Yeah, because we haven't seen it on the floor yet. I'm
No,
like, this
no,
is,
that's right.
I would be sitting having these questions had I
That's
see it
what,
come
that's
up.
what, that's
So-
what I was gonna say when it comes on the floor, ask those
It's
questions.
currently in appropriations, and I'm sure they'll probably take that up. It came from the Senate, so
Yeah.
Right.
Came from the
Okay.
Senate.
came from the
Gotcha.
Senate. All right. Well, look at that. Let's move on to. We got to get at least two of the things that we talked about. We got. I know you got to go. but, let's talk about education.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
You mean that's what we haven't done all
What's not
session,
happening
yeah.
in education?
So,
The nothing biscuits.
So here's, the current bill on the floor, or that's going to be
Potentially
on the
produced
floor,
by Ways and Means, yes.
H545, correct?
454, like a big block
sorry.
Chevy.
Yes, my mistake. And we're talking, it's going to force merge districts, right?
So I'm going to use the word potentially.
Potentially.
And the reason why
I'm not
using,
opposed to forced merging.
Well, and I'm not. Well, I wouldn't call it forced merging, but it is that, right? Let's be clear. But I'm going to say, when I say potentially is, it's such a big weight, this whole entire conversation. So, the way the bill went out is that it's going to, the bill has a subcommittee to a previous committee that was created about the future of schools in Vermont. And that subcommittee will be made up of past superintendents, I think a business manager, potentially two, and a school board member. All of them have to be past. They cannot be current, as it's written currently. And they are going to take a set of guidelines that were set forth by this bill, and they're going to use those directions to look at GIS maps, which the GIS surveys, and what they're going to do, that does is it takes like the lay of the land, right? The mountains, the rivers, the streams, where schools are, where homes are located, population centers. It's going to take all of this stuff, and that system will do all of that. And then it's going to take these other guidelines. They're going to come up with no more than 3 different new district models that will come back late this year to be brought to the General Assembly to be reviewed, to then decide which of these up to 3 models we might want to use. So what I say potentially is in all reality, we get 3 models and we say we don't want any of them, right? We as a legislature, we have the ability to say that. We get 1 model and we say that, right? They don't have to give us 3, they can give us 1.
So can I just ask, so that this basically is nothing more than a study again?
So
would this be a study number 39 or some
Yes.
study number
Something
40?
like that. You know who
No,
would
no,
know
I
that?
call it
It's Alice Farrell, because Alice is on the ball on this. Because a comment was made, and she wrote, because it was talking about the study, they're going to do another study, and she wrote, oh, Picus 1 wasn't good enough, Picus 2 wasn't good enough, APA wasn't good enough.
right.
No,
And she
none of it was good enough.
It was,
None of them
she
were.
went through like 5 or 6 different studies.
And none of it was good enough.
And she quoted
a
them.
lot of it wasn't good enough, and I guess I'm going to go on a limb on this one, but a lot of this to me wasn't good enough because it came from the governor and it came from the Agency of Education. Because I will tell you, more than once do I hear, and I'm sick of hearing it, is how the Agency of Education either shouldn't be around anymore and it should go to a Department of Ed. The Agency of Education doesn't know what they're doing. They have no trust in them and all these things. Now, I get there's been issues in the past, but they've been
Are you
doing
talking about federal, or are you
no,
talking
in
about
Vermont,
state?
in the state. When I say they don't want an agency, when I say they, I'm not going to get into that conversation, but there are those who do not want an agency of education. They don't want the governor to have any say in it. They want to separate it out. They call it so it's nonpartisan, but that's a whole nother conversation when you start putting the agencies in charge of everything. And so sorry, everybody.
Needless to
I
say,
just
we're
am
not
having
making much headway
no.
on
So
education.
we're kicking the can down the road. It's I don't you know I what should have happened is we should have taken this bill H454. The committee should have gone section by section by section by section together, had the right people in the room providing testimony for each section individually, picked it apart, what is good, what is not, what can be modified, go through it like you mean it, And then at the end, you would probably have a pretty decent bipartisan piece that comes out if everybody went into it with an honest want to do that. Instead, it turned into a strike all amendment that erases everything that was in there. And then there was some negotiation about what was going to be in there. And then at the very end, all of the negotiation and conversations that were supposed to go into it were pulled back, and we have what we have. And it's another way to kick the can down the road. We could have sat in the room for a week, and we would have had the best in the business. And when I say that, meaning the people who run the GIS reports, the people from all the associations, the people from AOE, teachers, principal, we could have had enough people in the room to actually have looked at new lines by the end of a week. But we didn't want to do that because it was too hard.
So let's talk about what came out, because
What bill? Which bill?
H454 so
Yeah, I get
strike
that.
all amended.
I get that,
Draft
but I'm trying to figure
8.1.
out which bill. The one that the governor submitted?
No, it started off as
So-
I'm looking at 454. I'm looking at the sponsors. And I'm like, this is not the bill. So the bill that they're using it as an empty vessel. So they're taking the 454. They completely got rid of it. They gutted it.
Okay.
And now
So it's
I
called.
feel kind of bad. Like if I was on that bill,
I
would
want
be
my name taken
pissed.
off.
Well,
Yes.
So
that's
it is-
what
so
the worry
it's-
is with this. No
It's a strike
cell phones
all.
in school.
That's what my worry is, because I just saw it happen in my committee with this bill. So it's called H454, but it's strike all amendment draft 8.1.
Wow.
H454 is what came out of the House Ed Committee and is now being done with in House Ways and Means, and they're even looking at adding things that have nothing to, they say have to do with education, but don't have, they could have done this before crossover too. And just like we put construction.
It's another stall.
Right, so here's the thing, right?
tactic.
School construction is a huge need in the state, and it needs to be addressed. And we had a beautiful bill on the wall that could have been worked through. We heard testimony on it, and then crossover came and went. So then crossover comes and goes. We get to this amended version, and boom, we're going to put what was on the wall minus a small change that needed to happen based on information from the AOE into it. We could have passed it as a standalone. So what do? They put it in this, again, Christmas tree, but this should have been its own standalone bill on its own. Now, was that to try and get conservatives on the committee to buy into it? Was it to say, hey, if they vote no, they're voting against construction, which they say they're for? I don't know what the purpose was, but I don't.
So what did come out of, what was the vote that come out of committee?
7-4.
740.
Oh, okay.
So I want to point out something that just like puts up my cockles on the bill, because it just
I
drives
just
me
enjoy
nuts.
that you said cockles.
I said cockles. All right. So we're talking about membership, the commission, referring to the commission, composed of the following members to the extent possible and shall represent the state's geographic, gender, racial, and ethnic diversity. The Secretary of Education or designee, the chair of the State Board of Education or designee.
Wait, I'm going to pause you. Is this I think you're reading for the actual committee, the Future of Public Schools in Vermont committee, not the subcommittee to the, because that committee that you're reading, you're probably going to read about 10 or 11 people,
Yes.
right? So the subcommittee only has 5, so you have to go down further.
Well, what's this committee?
That is the committee on the future of education in Vermont. The
I
committee.
don't know if I want
there
the
is a
mafia, the
there's a s-
acronym. Like
so they are
people there.
So they are.
I get irritated
so wait.
with that.
That committee, the parents committee, is a non. Or they're non-voting in this
That is
situation.
not a parents committee.
Well, you know
No,
what I mean.
That is not a
No,
parents
not a
committee.
parents committee,
Parents.
like the parent committee of the subcommittee.
Like parent
So-
corporation.
So there is a subcommittee to that committee that is doing the work. Now, part of the reason why it was done that way, my understanding, and I'm going to say that maybe I misunderstood, but I don't think I did, is that there is still, they have money and have already contracted out to do like public outreach. So they are going to use that public outreach to get information from the public about the redistricting to help use in their decision making. So there's money there, and there's way for them to use that through having it as a subcommittee to this committee. But that bigger committee has no voting power in this particular place.
I'm just going to point out that
I'm
all
just-
these people, all these different groups that are there are very powerful groups
Yep.
in our education system, and our education system is FUBARD.
Well, let's here. You want to make
Yeah,
it crazy?
it is. You're right.
If you go down in that, there's where they want to restructure the state board of ed, right? And so what they're doing is before the governor had the governor, regardless of who it was and what party affiliation they had, no matter what side of that you're on, they had the power to pick everybody, right? To
governor
appoint
did?
everybody on the board of education, which, if you look at the makeup of it, fairly well represents the educators in the state. They've changed it to where two of them are now no longer appointed by the governor. One is appointed by the speaker, and one is appointed by the committee on committees. What they wanted was 5 appointed by the 5 associations, NEA, Vermont Principal Association, Vermont Superintendent Association, and then I think it was,
That's such a
forgive me if I'm
partisan-
wrong, 2 by the speaker, 1 by the committee. Like the governor had like a couple, right? So the problem though is that when you have a committee of 9 voting members,
Yeah.
and 5 of them are elected by are appointed by non-politically elected people in organizations that have their own paid lobbyists in the House.
More than one.
They hold 5 seats, 1 each. Now, they all have differing agendas because they all are doing different things. But that's 5 people who can now vote and do whatever they want. They can call a meeting whenever they want. They always have a quorum, right? So you're now giving the power of the Board of Education to 5 non-elected associations.
Is that the way it is in the?
That's what they wanted to do, and then it got beat up.
Yeah, right.
And we got to the point where it's 2 people are not governor appointed. It's by and with that, it doesn't disrupt the governor.
Yeah.
What do they call it? It doesn't. There's a specific term for it. It doesn't do the thing that the other one would have done.
Yeah.
Because constitutionally, and there was argument from 2 different, from Ledge Council and from the Governor's Council. There was discussion about how it could be or couldn't be constitutional, which is one of the reasons why it all got changed. But I mean, that's how far they wanted to go. They wanted to give this power to the agencies,
Yeah.
right? And then they say they want to get rid of the AOE and let the board have the power of everything. Like, thank
they
you for
could do-
saying the quiet part out loud.
That feels like Project 2025 want to get rid of AOE.
So
I mean, it's on the wall. It's on the wall of the House Ed Committee that they want the bill that is to basically remove the AOE
Yeah.
and create just a Board of Education or a
Department
of
of
Education.
Yeah. No, that one came out. I remember reading that.
I'm surprised it didn't get tried to be. They didn't try and shoehorn it into the bill.
So anyway, we're right now. The
Subcommittee.
chair of the board of the committee. What's the reasoning behind him sitting in the cafeteria and talking to people?
I can answer that. So the purpose of that is so that he can explain it, and I mean it's to try to get people to sign on to it.
I see.
I
Okay.
think that's what the purpose is,
Okay.
and as it did come out of the committee a little bit split, so
Yeah.
they're going to have to, and it came out on party lines.
Straight across.
So, I mean, it's definitely gonna, I mean, it's gonna be an uphill road for Republicans to sign on to it.
Doesn't
One,
sound
because
very
it,
appealing to me.
right. Well, it doesn't sound appealing to me either.
Well, the people, the residents of the state of Vermont want something done sooner than, what'd you say, 2/29?
2027 is the
I-
earliest
I
they
didn't-
want to start seriously talking about it.
So Ways and Means came in and said that with the funding formula, we wouldn't be able to be ready till 2028, I think.
Yeah.
The modeling for the districts is supposed to come back at the end of this year. The problem is, though, is that if we don't address the governance issue of the districts so that we can have elections to do this, because they're going to put the elections are every 2 years, right, is when we run elections. Not everywhere, right? Current school boards are every year, but in this, they would try and put it on the 2-year election cycle in November. The Secretary of State said that all of that would have to be decided and put in place before, and forgive me if I'm wrong, it's either April or May 16th, I believe. If it doesn't happen by then, we'll wait for 2 more years. So if we don't get all of that done before April or May of this year,
25.
it won't
For
go
2
on
years.
the 2026's ballot. So then it will have to go 2 more years. So now you've pushed the governance. Then you can't do
So you're
anything
to
until then.
2029 now.
Right.
So
that
now we know why, to just cut to the chase, now we know why everything was slow walked to crossover, and then even the first week after crossover.
Well, I
now we
think-
know why. Drag your feet so this doesn't come out till late. Like you said, May 16th, nothing, because if something doesn't happen by May 16th, it's got to wait 2 years, and then there's even more waiting. So,
I just texted
yeah.
the thing I'm supposed to do next that I'm running behind, and I'll let them know.
I'm sorry. If
Don't
you
be
need
sorry.
if you need to go,
I'm in it.
you're in it now.
No,
You may have me on again now.
I have
I'm just not going to go on his
Well-
show.
one question. Yeah. It's all right. I'll get you. It's how are the voters going to feel about this?
Well, and you know what? And I heard this rumor floating around. Phil Scott is like hot on this. He is very hot on this education issue, and he's not happy that it's not being addressed. And who knows? Maybe
So here's what
You
it
know.
says. I'm trying not to, I'm obviously airing my concerns, and I'm trying not to do that too much, since I am on the committee, and I'm trying to just,
And
let the
let
discussion
me
go.
just say, I don't think I've heard whether or not he supports the bill. He's just hot on education
Right.
to fix it. And if he doesn't get it fixed this year or next year, he has to stick around. So I'm just saying,
And I wasn't going.
that's a positive for me.
And I wasn't going to get into that
And for
conversation.
everybody.
I just think though, right, like with all of this, we were supposed to tackle the budgetary cost, the cost that our taxpayers are paying, and how fiscally they can't handle anymore. And
But more to that, it's also
and the
it was
quality
also
of
the
education.
quality of
No, I
education.
wasn't
It's
done.
two
It's the
parts.
quality of education, like none of it happened.
Yeah.
As far like, and no shade on the committee, just saying that, like, I haven't seen anywhere that it happened. And the Ways and Means, even what I hear from out of there, I still don't see it happening, right? And that's what we were asked to go and do. And quite simply, the one thing that could have happened to start the ball rolling better than anything we have right now is they could have done a strike all on the whole bill and said, okay, we're going to work on, right now, we're going to work on the districts, and we're going to work on a funding formula that works for those districts, right? And then we're going to put governance out on it. We're going to create another bill that is going to be the governance piece. So these two things can get enacted right now, which would start saving constituents money out of the gate, because we would have had more of the consolidation around the administrative piece of education, which is where some of the cost is, and we would have had a new funding formula to start bringing us in line with what we need to spend. Then we move into the next year, and we're working on, and this whole time we start working on governance, but because we're past crossover, that goes into another bill that comes next year. And by the time we got into January, February of next year, we would have had a governance piece that could have moved forward. So we could have continued on this quick timeline, but instead it feels as though we've kicked the can so far down the road that instead of like any of these monetary and structural changes will not be felt by the taxpayers, if at all, until 2028, 29, 30, 31, 32. Whereas if you would have tackled districts and funding formula this year, so it goes right into effect, we would have started feeling the benefits of that next year.
Well, and you could have
Which-
finished the governance thing in the next, back in January, next January. My understanding is the governor said that he is not in favor of the legislature leaving until there is much more activity on this particular problem that we're in.
I have heard the rumors of that as well. I've not heard it from any of those that would, but I've heard
basically
all
the
of
same
that.
thing, Yeah.
That's not going to be fun.
I just.
Well, maybe we'll end up as a year-round legislature, like what folks have been trying to push for.
Or there'll be pitchforks and torches at the Capitol building.
And the thing is, right,
That's
like,
probably
so
more
ticked off.
likely.
and so, and
Yeah,
again,
I agree with you.
I get a lot of, being on the committee, I get a lot of emails, good and bad. We love it, we hate it. I hear in the community, love it or hate it. Again, there are those who still think what passed out of committee was what was introduced. There are those who wish that we had what was introduced, right? The problem is there still hasn't been the digging through and figuring it out, right? We're not doing the work that we were sent here to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the problem. And I'm a freshman. I came in. I still feel very optimistic. I will always feel optimistic, although sometimes I'm labeled as a pessimist.
I think
I feel optimistic that we can do it, but I came in being like, okay, this is the session that everybody's saying is compromised. This is where we're going to work together. We're going to only put out a few things so that we make sure we do the things right. And it was like, it felt that way for the first 3 to 4 weeks. And then it was like this, everyone's like, here it comes. And you watch the whole thing change, where that's not how it's going. It's going back to the way it was. The legislature at large, so I would say, a lot of us heard what they said. There are a lot of people in that legislature who are not listening.
What you did do the work. Don't discredit
Right.
what you did.
No, we did do the
You
work.
did do the work. The result, though, was not what you wanted, and
think our
probably not
constituents want.
what our constituents want. And that's an issue that people at the ballot box need to address in 2026, because that's a huge problem if we're, as a legislature, are kicking the can down the road, and that's the way that I understand it. Of course, the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee is going to pick up the slack for you and take over the CTE stuff. So we'll take care of that portion, and then you can handle the.
I think my question to that, though, is, doesn't the CTE portion live within within that committee?
It does.
So then
but
why? So then
what I want to do is I want to take over the high schools,
Why do you want to do that?
because I want high schools to be. I want career technical high schools where we're not fighting over children for career education or college education.
Yep.
And if a kid wants to go into the career fields, super easy to do it.
See, I mean, like when I grew up, right? When I went to high school, that's what we had. We had everything in one building for everybody.
We have that now.
You do.
We
but
partly
not everywhere
do.
does.
Not every, like U32 doesn't.
But that's what, right.
But we
I
do.
See, right.
See, we need to have regional high schools, and regional high schools that are career.
That have the,
Well,
Exactly. So, sorry.
H89, I'm doing a blatant plug for my bill.
Okay.
If you don't get, sorry, I don't care what anybody says, if you don't get true school choice in this state, you are not going to see any improvement, whether it be price, cost of education, or the quality. If mom and dad don't get the choice to say, this school absolutely is horrible, my kid is going, and the money needs to follow, then we're not going to see a change. I just do not believe it. Coming from a business where if you provided a crappy service, you are out of business. If you provided good quality service at a reasonable price, even if you were middle of the road, sometimes even if you were the highest, if the quality was good, you got the customers. And that needs to be what happens in our schools. And it's sadly, sorely lacking right now.
So I know that
I
you
feel
and I,
for the governor and why he doesn't want us as a legislature to go home until it's done, because we haven't been tapping the brakes. We basically have been just moving at a turtle's pace, nibbling around the edges. So
I know.
that's my 2 cents for whatever the hell it's
I'll
worth.
let you give your pitch. Mike and I have had multiple conversations about the school choice issue. I like school choice, but my comment is always not at the expense of our
I don't
our
see
public
it
education.
being as an expense because like I said, when you have the moderating value of the competition, I don't think you're going to have that stress monetarily that you think you're going to have.
But I'll pose to you what the concern that folks are having is that if, let's say, Sally Muckinfudge, right? She goes to a school.
Okay.
She's a high flyer, right? And her parents are like, you know what? I want Sally to go to Websterville, which is the Baptist church. Fine. But then we start seeing that happen a lot, and all that money from Sally and from the others are taken away from that school, and it creates a death spiral. And
I don't know. You see it as the school's money if the taxpayer is paying it, and if it's the child that needs to go to the school. To me, it's the parents and the child's money, not the school district's money.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that portion of it. That I get what you're saying, but the parents that don't move their children out
Yep.
are stuck in that school, and the resources keep going down and down and down. And Sally Muckinfudge, okay, only costs $2,000 to educate.
Well,
She only costs $2,000 to educate because we know that all we have to do for Sally is throw a book at her and she'll just read it. But
right now, we're discriminating against that student. We're discriminating because we're taking the money we know that we don't need to spend on Sally and spending it at somewhere else. What are you doing about the schools where I've heard it from parents already. There's violence in the school. My kid is terrified to go to class. I was never terrified to go to school. Why are we having it now? So
that's a
excuse me
different
for-
conversation. That's a different
it's,
conversation.
It's a school conversation, so I don't think it's completely different. It's
Well,
got
no,
to
I
be
mean-
part of the equation.
So I do have to leave here, sure.
Oh, sorry.
But before I do,
Sure,
I'm going to
don't
throw.
bail out
I'm,
when it gets
I'm
hot and
no, I'm going to
contentious.
throw. I know. I'm going to throw. I'm going to throw some fuel to the fire. So I hear both of your arguments, and I'm not going to share on either side of it. I'm going to bring something into the middle of it. So, Mike, what you had said was that you used Websterville. Websterville is an independent school.
Correct.
Currently in the state of Vermont, independent schools are on a moratorium. You can't create a new one. They serve roughly 4,000 students in the state out of 80,
3,000 or 86,000?
whatever it is, right? Over 80,000. So, and those schools are mostly at capacity, and a significant amount of them already pull kids from communities that don't have schools that they can. So there's a thing called tuitioned. So sometimes
Yep.
a community doesn't have grade, or a district doesn't have grades that they can. Like, so they may have a school that is
They don't
K
have a high
through
school.
6, so there's no high school. So those people get to send to whoever they would like. And a lot of times, the only school in their area, like down south, it would be Burton, is the only school that is in that area, and it's a private school, right? So, or an independent school. So, there is the argument to me about the independent schools doesn't fly because there's not enough of them to take on enough students to create the big hurt that everyone worries about. And we're not allowing any to be built or brought online. So unless that changes, I don't know that point. However, I can see whereas, let's say, U32 creates this school, this regional school that is like the bomb, right? Best around. And then the kids from Barry get siphoned into that school, and then you start losing the funds here. That's where your argument to me makes sense. I caution you about using independent schools in that way, because that is an argument that falls flat for many people.
You're right. I see what you're saying. Websterville came to my mind immediately.
I just wanted to
but you're right. U32 or vice versa.
Right.
If
Williamstown.
right. Nobody would ever go there.
Stop it.
Here's
But no, I mean that's the thing though. If kids were like, oh, my parents say I'm going to have my kid go to Williamstown because their school's built on a foundation of
Their
granite.
basketball team's killer.
whatever draws them to it. It doesn't.
Right,
doesn't
but
matter.
whatever, like you said, whatever draws it to them. The school that's being left behind has less resources. And it especially affects the kids that have more, it's just demographically speaking.
I know where you're going.
The
with it.
concern that I have is that it can't be at the expense of a public school. It just,
So here's where I come in at it. Again, then we need to have the conversation around the whole thing, because there is for families, the family should be able to use their funds, because it does come out of the pot. Now, their funds, right? Let's be clear. There's a pot of money that comes from all sorts of taxes and other means, and then you have your homestead tax, right? The part that actually we all pay on our houses. I do think that parents should be able to take that money and use it to send their kid to whatever school they want. It's their money. They should do that. Now, I do see your concern, and I do see that there's a middle ground between the two and a way to get there that works. But that's the thing, is that this thing is going to sit, your bill is going to sit on the wall, just like a lot of other bills that either side of the aisle have some merit, but we're not willing to have the conversation now. We're not willing to sit there and say, I'm going to have a conversation regardless of what it does to me politically.
Well,
Because that's where my problem is you have some good points and you have good points.
who's keeping the discussion from happening? That needs to be brought out. That needs to be brought out.
I
the
definitely
acronym
agree.
mafias.
Right.
The who? The
acronym
acronym.
mafia.
Chair of the committee.
So, and the
No,
acronym.
the acronym mafias.
That tell the chair not to do it, or tell whoever not to
Oh,
do it. I'm
right.
not even gonna throw it. Anyways, so I'm just saying, right? Like, and here's the deal. Like, you see a school like any of the independent schools, right? And then we talk about therapeutic schools, and that's a whole nother conversation because they fall within independent schools. And then when you hear people say we want all of that to be within the public school system, so then you take the people who built these independent schools when we wouldn't do it as a state to do all this work, and now you're saying, well, we want to close them down to do it. So we have to just be careful with the conversation, because the independent schools serve a very important purpose from the biggest to the smallest. And people want their choice. They move to places like Washington so they can send their kids to where they want to go. And that is important. And there are people in Barrie who may not like Spalding because of some things that happen there that they don't like, and would rather send them to Rice or to Williamstown. And then the other side of that argument is, well, then the families that have will, and the families that don't have will not. Well, instead of taking it away from everybody, find a way to make it accessible for everybody.
But the way the lottery system, in H89 there's a lottery system. So if whatever the school that the student is at, whatever that money for that student is assigned
Right.
to that school, there would be an application process. You just pick the name of the school, whatever it is. Johnny wants to go to this one. Maybe it's got a career and technical institute. Maybe that's what
Maybe they
kind
want
of
to come
school
to
it is.
Spalding.
Maybe, who cares? It doesn't matter. And I think there even needs to be a provision for people who want to homeschool. They're not, people who are homeschooling are paying into the public school system, and they're using virtually nothing and getting anything.
Again.
But if that money can follow the student, it doesn't matter whether Johnny's mom and dad make $500,000 or if they make $30,000.
And Mike, I completely get that, and it's where it gets back to my original comment.
Right.
Is I like school choice, but not at the expense. So
What
maybe
I'm-
that means instead of, because the foundation formula is $13,000 per pupil or per student per
13.2,
kid.
but in this
Was.
new bill, it's higher.
Okay, well,
Whatever the ways and means is doing, it's totally different. So don't even think.
And
of it
then,
that way.
and then the weight is added on top of that.
So-
But,
Right.
but if we're talking about, taking a portion and then redirecting to a different school, I would be okay with that.
Well,
But to take the
is
entire
weight-
amount is where I get.
What would the weight go to? You mean you're talking about a specific need per student?
Low income
So
or
that you
whatever.
so maybe you take away the weight. If it's 13.2, the 13.2 goes. The other question I have is, what do we do with things like these? When one manufacturer comes out with a drop dead gorgeous phone that everybody loves, what do the other manufacturers do?
Poor Josh, he's gonna go.
They look at you. He's not going to get hit. If he gets hit, he's going to know it.
No. He's saying I gotta go. Because
but
we're
if-
working on hour 2 at
If
this point.
I know.
one manufacturer over the other makes a better
can go if
phone,
you
what
want.
does the other manufacturer do?
Make a better
So
phone.
we'll-
Figure out how to make their phone as good. And why wouldn't differing schools try to do the same thing if they notice that some schools are expanding and some schools aren't?
So to be clear, right? Let's be clear. I'm gonna choose states that have different political ideologies. California
Yeah.
has school choice. You can go to any school you want in California. They don't have choice within their independent schools, but they have choice within all of their other schools. Florida has choice within all of their schools. We have 2 very politically and ideologically different states that do it. California being one of the most progressive states, right? If I believe, and I'm going to say, please correct me if I'm wrong, Massachusetts, you can go to your schools of choice. Connecticut. So in Connecticut, if you want to, not independent schools, but if you want to go to Emmett O'Brien Academy or Charlton High School, you can go to either.
That's very interesting.
And you will be bused too. Now you may sit on a bus for 2 hours, and that's where an argument will come in. Well, we don't want our kids sitting on the bus for 2 hours. However, if that child or family is like, that opportunity is there, like, it might be worth sitting on the bus for the 2 hours to get that education that you want, right? To take it away from other students because these students who are 2 hours away can't take advantage, then give them a way to get there and let them make the choice on their own. Don't take the choice away from them. But in this particular instance, right, I just named 2 states that were more progressive leaning states or Democrat led states, and 1 conservative led state. And there's more conservative led states that are doing it too. But what I'm saying is, here are states that have been doing it, and some of them have been doing it for a long time, and I don't even know the specifics. So there could be nuances that I don't know. But I know in Connecticut they're doing this because I know people who live in Connecticut who've done this. And when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to fill out a form. All I have to do is say, this is where I want to send my kid, and then the kid gets to go there.
And what about scores, test scores? What about graduation rates, stuff like that?
I mean,
Are they all about the same with the school choice?
yeah, I
Well,
mean,
but
so
still-
there are schools that are better. Like, I was just talking to someone this weekend from in Connecticut, and I don't want to name towns, but there is a southern town. There's a town that's west of New Haven, that's on the water, and their school compared to another school that is more on the Housatonic River Valley, one school's not a great place to be, and the other one's a fantastic place to be, right? But here's the thing: is that you're only going to be able to, you have only so many schools, and you're only going to be able to put so many kids in each school. Right, so what'll end up happening is either a school's going to have to put money into building a new wing, or the school's going to be at capacity. So I do see that there'll be some movement, but unless a school, but if it's a public school, right, like, where are they going to get the funds to build a new wing? And if it's an independent school, we're in a moratorium anyways, so no new ones are coming online. And I mean, they could put a new wing on, and they may. but how many kids is that going to take out of the market?
Well,
And-
this is very interesting. We will have to look into this a little bit more.
Yes.
I think I'll probably cut the conversation short, one, because you've got to go, and we are pushing at a 1 hour and 40 minutes, folks.
Really?
Yeah.
This is what happens when you put
We'll
the talker in the
do a
room.
real quick one here. The governor's veto. He vetoed the BAA,
second BAA.
again.
Yep.
And so that will likely be upheld when it comes out. He's been very strong about
If
the
it gets
general-
voted on. If
If
it
it even gets
hits the
voted on.
floor.
Comes back, right.
Yeah. By
be-
then it may not matter.
BAA 3.0.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
So with that, I want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. And it was definitely this is the longest I think we've ever gone.
It's
Very
only
different,
felt
too.
like 40 minutes.
I feel
Very
40
different,
minutes.
too.
I feel like, huh?
Very different.
It is very different. I feel like we probably could have gone another 30 to 40 hours.
Easily.
Hours, he says. Hours.
Could have
Easily.
done a couple more hours. But I do want to say thank you for coming, and hope that you guys all come back, obviously. And want to say thank you for everybody watching the Capital Beat podcast live, streamed live to 802 Scoop, and recorded here in the Inside Scoop Studios, Main Street, Barrie, Vermont. And with that, we shall wish you all a great evening.